Hi guys, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about game development and why I'm starting it now so late in life and what I'm going to be using for it. So what programming language, what engine. I'm actually not going to be using an engine, what kind of games I'm going to be building, what I'm going to be learning from, and basically just kind of like how I intend to approach it. And I think I'm going to be doing things a bit differently to how most people would be if they were starting in 2025. But if you'll allow me a little bit of indulgence, I'm going to explain a bit about my background because I think that will give some context and explain, kind of help you understand why I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently to most. So I'm going to show you some very geeky retro stuff. All right. This is a Commodore 64. Whereabouts is it? There. Okay. That was my first computer. Not this precise machine, but this model of Commodore 64. That was my first computer. It was known as the bread bin. I got it in 1982. And that computer changed my life. It just started me off on computing and programming and everything. The difference between, see, that was an 8-bit computer. The difference between computers back then and now is when you switched it on, you got a cursor prompt. You had to type stuff. This is the user manual. Look how thick it is. And this isn't telling you, like, yeah, how to switch it on. This is all programming stuff. So, for example, I've got a page up here. This is showing you how to draw sprites on the Commodore 64. And I remember doing this and feeling absolutely fascinated by it. I was like, oh my God, this is how we draw graphics on the screen. And this was how I got started. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to buy all these Commodore magazines. As you can probably tell, I've got quite the collection. So this is an example of one. So Commodore User Magazine, when was it from? February 1987. And I've got in here an example, right, of a program listing. This game, Cargo Chopper, sorry, I'm not very good at this camera stuff. That is an actual listing in BASIC that you could type in. And if you type it in without errors, you could get a playable game. And I was absolutely fascinated by these things because as I started to sort of like read in the user manual and look at it, I thought, oh, if I change this thing, I can change like the sprites and change how it works and stuff like this. So I was kind of naturally curious, and that's how I got started in programming. And I had this book. I bought several books, but like this one here, they were all, when it says 21 sensational games, but they were all program listings that you type in. And so again, it's just like if you go to GitHub today and you look at someone's source code, it's the same thing. I was looking at source code from the age of 12, and the thing that really did it for me was this book. Commodore 64 Adventures by Mike Grace, a guide to playing and writing. So that book, I liked text adventures, and this book was the first one that really showed you how to actually really create a proper game. This showed you how to create a system, how to do a map, how to do an inventory system, how to do a parser for text, and how to do like movement and that kind of stuff. And that blew my mind, and I created my first game when I was about 12 or 13, and it was a little adventure game, and I was just blown away from it. I remember being absolutely devastated because my tape chewed it up. Anyway, enough of my face, enough of that. I'm now gonna just switch back to the screen and show you what I'm going to be doing and why. So my programming journey started back in the 80s when I was, barely even a teenager, and that was over 40 years ago. So why didn't it happen? Why have I never become a game developer? Mainly, life just took me in a different direction. It just didn't happen. This website I showed you briefly in the previous video, I wrote a blog post about it, actually, about saying what my history is. It's pretty long as another one of those magazine listings, and I show that that book that I had, and I was what I was saying in here is that when I was a kid, I read stories in those magazines about people that had written these games by themselves. Because, of course, back then, those computers were relatively simple. The games weren't like they are today. You think of it like a AAA game, it needs like a huge studio, right? And so it's quite common for just a guy to, and they're always guys, they're always men, to just create a game on their own. And so that was it. I decided, right, that's what I want to do. I want to be a game developer. But like I said, it just didn't happen. I had a kind of a brush with it. So as you can see, this is quite a long post. This was something I did at uni. When I was at university for my final year project, I wrote something in C sharp, which was a little, well, I say little, it's something like 26,000 lines of code, but it's basically a tiny little game engine for the beginnings of an RPG. This was like a little bit of the class diagram. It was actually multiplayer as well, but even this was over 20 years ago. I graduated from university in 2006. So I wrote this in 2005, so 20 years ago. And then since then, after university, I got a job as a C sharp developer, but it was in application stuff, nothing to do with games. But then since then, I became self-employed. I actually left the programming industry and I went to work for myself. And I created this monstrosity here called I'm Automated. This is a screenshot from, what year is this? I can't remember. So I started this in 2009. And this was something that was it was an online tool. It's called Software as a Service. It was written in PHP and Zend. And the thing with web development is it's a completely different paradigm to any sort of either desktop development and certainly game development. It's just very different. And so this is why I'm starting from scratch now. But also, one of the reasons why I'm only starting now, why haven't I started this 20 years ago? And the reason is I didn't even know it was possible. And I think something that has changed in recent years is things like modern game engines like Unity and Godot. So I talked in the previous video about, let me just go to a darker screen so it's not shining on my face. I talked in a previous video about Lens Island, didn't I? Let me just get Lens Island back up. And this game, I was watching the dev diaries and they were all done by one guy, and I was absolutely blown away by what he could do on his own. But he was using an engine, Unity engine, and in some of his videos he would show, in a lot of his videos actually, he would show how he was doing it, and he'd show all these things. And I was like, oh my god, that's completely overwhelming. I'm not sure I can do that. But then I came across Stardew Valley. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Stardew Valley, right? This is the absolute hit sensation from 2016 that has sold tens of millions of copies. This guy is so rich, and this is the thing. I only recently found out, not only was this made by one solo developer, right, Eric Baroni, he did everything himself. He did the coding, he did the artwork, he did the sound, he wrote every single line of dialogue, he did everything, and he did it over and over and over again. The reason it took 4.5 years is because he kept like redrawing the graphics, rewriting the code, just doing everything from scratch, because he actually started this as a pet project to practice his programming, and then it just evolved. But what was interesting to me was I found out that he had built this on something called MonoGame, kind of. So he built it on something called Microsoft XNA, which is a now defunct framework for writing games. It was originally designed for the Xbox platform. It is now, so MonoGame is now the open source sort of spiritual successor to XNA. And it's actually, if I bring up my code actually, you'll see the includes up there. Microsoft XNA framework is compatible with XNA and Stardew Valley. If you have a look in the showcase here for 2D games, being slow, But anyway, Stardew Valley is in this list. And, oh, right down the bottom. And what I like about this is that MonoGame is a framework. You see, what I am used to is code that looks like this. You've got an IDE, this is Visual Studio, and you have code, you have text. I'm not used to a visual editor. So for example, I found this image here of this is the Godot scene editor, and it looks a little bit less cluttered than Unity, but still it's the same kind of thing. And what I figured was that for me personally, if you're somebody who doesn't have my background and you're coming into game dev now as a new developer, if you're like a teenager or a young person, however old you are, right? If you're starting this now and this is all you've ever known, then this is what you're going to learn. This is what you're used to. Whereas I'm used to a different paradigm. It's like I'm a PC gamer, okay? I am keyboard and mouse all the way. Hashtag pcmasterrace. Give me a controller, I cannot use it. Absolutely cannot use a controller. I have tried. Whereas if you were to get a console gamer and give them a keyboard and mouse, you know, WASD, they're probably going to be completely screwed. They won't be able to use it. It's what you're used to. And this is the thing. I am used to this and not that. And so that is why I'm starting with MonoGame. So the downside, well, is it a downside or is it not? This is the thing. MonoGame is kind of a sparse framework. It's got documentation isn't actually that great. Where's the API reference? It's got basic drawing functionality. It's got collision detection. It's got stuff for rendering sprites, for doing sound effects and stuff. Why is my internet going so slow? Yeah, the documentation isn't great, but I'm going to also show you some resources that I've been using to learn from. So basically, you kind of have to build your own engine around it. You know, you have to do your own stuff, and this is something that I've started to do here. I've started to abstract out. I'm not going to go into all of this now. I'm going to save this for another video. But basically, in order to create a game with MonoGame, you've got to do a bit more work. An engine, going back to here, an engine such as Unity or Godot, you get a lot of functionality out of the box, which is a good thing. It means that modern games can be developed quickly. I mean, looking at what Julian Ball has been able to do with Lens Island on his own. I mean, he does have a team of people now, but if you look at his early videos, the first couple of years, it was all him. And he did that all by himself whilst working. So it allows you to develop much more quickly, but I think you learn more if you've got to do it from scratch. And this is the thing. I want to learn for the fun of it. I'm not trying to be a game developer. I'm not trying to, you know, I certainly don't want to get another job. You know, I'm 53. I don't, you know, my time of jobs is done. So, but I'm also not trying to be the next Eric Baroni, right? I just want to do this for fun. I'm happy building these tiny little games. And so this is my plan. I've started with Pong. And my idea is to build lots of small games. So let me show you a couple of the resources that I'll be learning from. So I came across this. So Harvard CS50, you might have heard for this. Harvard CS50 is a complete, basically, computer science degree which they have online for free for anyone to watch. And this is part of it, the introduction to game development. And as you can see here, it's been retired in 2024. This particular course is old. It's from 2018. But what they do is in every lecture each week, they take a popular game, they break it down, and they have got, so if I click into Pong, so they've got a video lecture. Each one is about 2 hours, so that would be off-putting for quite a lot of people. But then on the slides, it shows you, they teach you various kinds of things. So if I come down here, so it's showing you delta time, velocity, game state, box collision, this kind of thing. So it's teaching you core concepts which are going to be useful for game development. And by doing all of these different games, it's going to set you up to, you know, as a sort of a foundation. So this is kind of what I want to do. And what I like about this is written in, excuse me, Lua and Love 2D. Love 2D is like a 2D engine which is using the Lua scripting language, so it sounds a little bit convoluted and it's not something I'd ever really use, but I like to sort of like take the concepts that he's got here and then create my own version in MonoGame. So that's exactly what I've done with Pong. Now, excuse me while I just clear my throat. So in this course they reference a book, and it's a book called Game Programming Patterns. Now you can... why is everything being so slow on my computer? Sorry. Programming Patterns by Robert Nystrom. And this has lots of kind of patterns for how to make games sort of the right way. And what's really cool about this is you can just read it completely free on the web. I'm just online here. So I was talking about state earlier. So this is something that I've been looking at here, the state pattern. And in each one of these, you know, he's got all these, some like code examples, he's got some diagrams and all this kind of stuff. This is completely free. Another thing I found here, this is another university thing. It's like a textbook and it's teaching you some basic game stuff, but this is all again in MonoGame. Now this isn't really a course like the Harvard one, really it's just like a series of extended articles, but I actually found this stuff to be better than the official MonoGame documentation, so that's kind of handy. I have found a book, this one here, so I've been working through a little bit of this. I've only just started this one, Learning C# by Programming Games. Now this really is a book about C# primarily, but again it's based on MonoGame and it goes through 4 different games. It builds out 4 different games, and again it's teaching you. So here it's dealing with player input, game objects, game worlds, game states, levels, animation, physics, intelligence. It's teaching you the core concepts, and that's what I want. I find that you can go to YouTube and get a tutorial on, you know, how to create a game of Pong in 13 minutes, but all that's going to be showing you is the easiest way to get it done, right? So I've seen tutorials where they've just got the whole thing in one file, and yeah, it works fine. But how are you going to, if you want to then build a much bigger, more comprehensive game later in life, how is that going to help you having done that little Pong game? So I'm going to be building out lots of these little games, and I think that is going to be my approach. Now at some point I think I'll probably move away from MonoGame, and I'll probably will move over to an engine such as Godot. I don't know when that will be. I think I'll just know when I'm ready. But as long as I'm sort of enjoying what I'm doing, that's fine. Now let me actually show you what I've done. So I'm just going to briefly show you the first game. Actually, let me just... No, I'm not going to, because I need to turn the sound down. I need to change the sound effects. I don't think I can turn it off, or can I, actually? I just changed my volume mixer. Yeah. Because it's got awful bloody sound, which I need to change. Right, so you've got an AI player on the right, and I'm the blue paddle. The ball starts off really slow, gets a little bit faster, and it basically just goes on. Ooh, there you go. Just basically goes on forever. I'm crap at these games. So there's quite a lot I want to do with it. I certainly want to rewrite it to be done in a different way, and I want to add some more features and, yeah, just make it a little bit better, make it a bit more complete. Yeah, I suck. So in future videos, this has been a very sort of general introduction. In future videos, what I'll be doing is I'll go through the actual code, what I'm doing. So one thing I do want to put out as a disclaimer, I'm a newbie. I'm learning from scratch. Even though I have development experience and I have done some game stuff in the past, that was 20 years ago. I don't remember any of that stuff I did at university. I actually had a look through the document I did for it and I couldn't remember any of it. So I'm starting from scratch. So I'm not doing tutorials because I don't know how to teach any of this stuff, because I'm just a beginner myself. I'm learning, but I'll just be showing what I'm doing, and I'll be in each one I'll be showing. So for that MonoGame, for example, if I go to my itch page for the game, I will be showing things like where I've got the art assets from, where I've got the sound assets from, anything that's useful for it, and then obviously like the development log. So if you like to read You might prefer my blog posts on here. So I'm kind of going to be doing both YouTube and blog posts, written blog posts on Itch and on that this website. This is my solo game devs. This is going to be, it's not really about me, this website. I just wanted a couple of blog posts to put something on the front page. This is where I'm going to be talking about actual developers like Eric Baroni, Stardew Valley. This needs a lot of work, but generally speaking, what I'm going to be doing is just walking through my code, showing what I'm learning, the kind of mistakes that I'm making. You know, I had a horrific problem right at the very beginning when I did this, and it was such a stupid error, and I actually wrote about it in my blog post. And so this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm just kind of be walking through my code and just sharing my journey. And I'm just looking at my timer here, 16 minutes, waffling. So this is going to be like a over 20-minute video. I do have kind of ADHD. I can't like prepare a script or anything and read off that, so I am just going to have to kind of like go off the cuff, which means that I do tend to waffle and go off in tangents and lose my place and forget what I was talking about. I've actually had to record this video a second time. This is why I have a different top on, because I realised that I completely missed what I was supposed to be talking about and started waffling on about a whole bunch of stuff that's completely irrelevant. So here I go. So if you've managed to watch all of this, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. If I can find the button to turn this off.